Righto, so a new technological advancement for CT scanners has actually come about with the Pokemon trading card world, and it has kind of caused a stranglehold within the Pokemon community and the Yu-Gi-Oh community and Magic the Gathering and sports card collectibles, and everyone is kind of waiting to see what's the next step and what's going to be the kind of answer from these companies to these CT scanning products, right? So pretty much if you haven't been kept up to date, there is a new technological advancement where people have found out how to CT scan packs of Pokemon cards, of sports cards, and they are able to reveal the hollow pattern of the cards inside the packs. And you can pretty much see what's inside the cards by, and now they've even offered services where you can actually pay to send your cards for, an absurd amount of money, and then they'll CT scan the cards inside the pack, and then they will tell you what's inside. So this is a pretty big deal, but more so than that, it's kind of making me think, wow, this is a really interesting point for the market as well. Now, this time period that we're in right now is very, very delicate, guys, because we are at a nexus point right now. Companies can either adapt to this or they can kind of bury it in the shadows. We are at a very interesting point in time because, these things happen. Threats for businesses, for everything happen every day. And if you don't know, like when we had like this business school meeting, we were kind of learning about businesses and they were teaching us about Nokia and Sony Ericsson. Now, if you guys know about these companies, they were a massive mobile company, and they pretty much in 2007, they were like the top of their game. They were the dominant figures in the space. Nokia and Sony Ericsson, they were like the kingpins of, the mobile networking world. And then the iPhone came out and they didn't adapt to the smartphone. They said, no, we're going to stay with the way that our mobiles are. We're going to stay with, we think we've got a good product. And because they didn't adapt, they are now completely gone and obliterated out of the mobile world or the smartphone world. The smartphone era took over the mobile world, and now we're in a completely new era, right? And that was because they did not adapt. And we are now at that same point where companies need to adapt. But I want to just go into it. So there is this kind of video that came about, and I'm just looking at it now, and okay, so there we go. We can see that the Gengar outline is kind of shown. So it finds an obvious point of the characteristic of the Pokemon, and it kind of can pull that out in the CT imaging scan. I think even with these, it's going to be even easier with modern cards just from seeing that now, just because modern cards have such unique characteristics about them. So, this Gengar, just had the horn or whatever you want to call it that it pointed out in the CT scan image picked up. I think with modern cards, that's going to be way easier. You look at something like a Sylveon VMAX or an Umbreon VMAX, those kind of characteristics in those cards are going to be so easy to pick up. You do need specific knowledge of these cards. So it's not just someone can have a CT scan. So if you're, scanning vintage cards, I think everyone can make the hollow patterns of those as well. But, if you're doing sports card and Yu-Gi-Oh cards, there may be a little bit of challenging times. Like if you're trying to find the rare Yu-Gi-Oh cards, I don't know, like something about me tells me like you have to have specific knowledge of all these cards when you're doing it as well. It's like you have to really know the cards you're looking for. So that's also, look, there's a few barriers to entry with it as well. It's not just like, hey, I'm gonna buy a CT imaging scan. I think you need to know how to use this technology to a pretty good level. I think you also then need to have good Pokemon knowledge or good knowledge of the collectible that you're kind of looking at. Why I'm kind of looking at this and why it's not scaring me, or I've seen a lot of people freak out and they say, it's the end. All right, this is why I'm not too freaked out about it, right? The amount of money that these corporations make, they've literally been printing cardboard and selling it to people for money. They have never needed to adapt in any way, shape, or form. Do you really think sport card collectibles, one of the biggest money-making machines in the world, is now not going to adapt when a threat this large could completely cannibalize their whole industry? Man, you don't even have to worry about Pokemon. You have to just think about these sport card collectors, because Pokemon, people can still play the TCG, so they might be like, whatever. Think of just sports cards. This is a threat that also affects them. It doesn't just affect Pokemon. It affects sports cards. It affects Bandai with One Piece and Dragon Ball Fusion World. It affects Yu-Gi-Oh! It's a collective threat. And now someone is gonna need to come up with a solution, which I'm gonna go into in a second, on how to combat this kind of threat. And do not think for any second that, sports cards are gonna let this money slip through their fingers. As much as it affects the collectors, trust me, these corporations are not gonna let free money slip from their fingers. Obviously, a lot of work goes into it. It's not like they're just putting Pokemon on cards. There's the artistic styles they go with, that takes a lot of work. You gotta pay the illustrators, you gotta make sure that they have an artistic theme, you gotta make sure that each set is always coming up with new things. There's obviously a lot of work that goes into it, but really once you do that work, it's, you print money pretty much. You're printing cards that you put in a pack. I think that this is actually a fantastic thing that's happening. I'm going to tell you why. This now causes some sort of innovation that's needed within the trading card hobby, and I think it's been stagnant for a while. I think we need some levels of innovation to come in. We've seen metal cards, right? You know, metal cards come with promo boxes. You see the new metal cards. Are we going to have to introduce more of these cool things within the hobby? I think this is the direction that it's going to need to go, because I mean, look at the world's changing, guys. Is there going to be a digital aspect to collecting cards? You open a pack and then you have a digital equivalent where we can also trade digital copies of the same card. We have the physical version and the digital. I don't know. I don't have the answer, but what I am saying is that there will be a level of adapting that needs to take place, and you don't have to worry too much because it doesn't just affect Pokemon. Do you really think the sport card industry is going to let a threat of this magnitude slip? I think we're going to see an answer to this very, very shortly, as early as 2025. Just for a little bit of fun, I did, because I love using, marketing. I'm always using ChatGPT, to do it. So I want to just take you through. I asked ChatGPT what we could do. So just check this out here, right? So this is the question I posed to ChatGPT, right? Pokemon currently have an issue with people being able to CT scan packs to reveal what rare Pokemon cards are inside the pack. Could you write a few strategies that Pokemon could do to ensure that this CT scanning technology would be rendered useless when scanning packs? So ChatGPT, our good friend, has come out with, it scanned the world of the internet, the whole world, and it said, certainly here are a few strategies that Pokemon could implement to make CT scanning ineffective for revealing rare cards inside booster packs and booster boxes. Number one is multi-layered foil and materials. Using multiple layers of materials, including foils and reflective surfaces, to distort CT scan images. Okay, so that's one thing they can do, right? Second point they say is randomized foil patterns. Incorporate random patterns or textures inside the booster pack, wrapping to create noise in CT scan images. So number three, they have metalized inks and holographic elements. Use metalized inks and holographic elements on card surfaces to cause significant interference with CT scans. So they can use some sort of maybe a new printing thing will have to come up. I do know as well that they could also use this iodine coated paint, from what I've heard, whether or not that's inside the booster packs. And I also know that they could potentially use some sort of metal inside the booster pack to kind of stop this interference. Will this cost be passed on to the consumer? You bet. We would have to be paying more per pack, but then again, maybe this is the kind of thing that trading cards need in order to adapt. Maybe there's also going to be a digital equivalent to cards that come up sooner rather than later. We don't know, but obviously a level of adaptability needs to take place. Number four is thicker card stock for rare cards. Create rare cards with slightly thicker or denser card stock to disrupt scanning attempts and cause inconsistencies, right? And then you got randomized shielding materials, including small randomized shielding materials within the pack, such as thin metal strips or particles to disrupt the scanning process. That one seems the most likely. I can really see that they're going to put like some sort of metalized component within inside these packs to stop the interference. I think this is the kind of level that they need to go with, and I think that this has to happen sooner rather than later. Number six is decoy cards. Insert decoy cards that have similar scanning profiles to rare cards but are common to confuse scanning attempts. That is awesome. That is awesome. So what you could have is a very common Umbreon VMAX inside the pack, which is a code card, essentially a code card that looks identical but doesn't have the foil pattern, and it's just like a very weaker copy of the card, and then you have the kind of rare card inside the pack. That is an awesome idea, and I think that could work. You could pretty much just have the image of that card slithered inside. It's like a code card, but it doesn't have the foil pattern. It's not the actual rare card. It's just kind of like a code card and shows you kind of elements, and they could be randomized. That is a cool idea. That's a great idea. Number seven is variable packing configurations. Vary the configuration of cards within packs, such as altering the orientation or placement of rare cards to make it harder for scanners to identify the cards. I don't think that's really going to matter. I think obviously if you just put it from back to front, they'll still be able to find it. So that one's kind of a moot point. Then we have special inks for encryption. Use special inks that react differently under scanning to encrypt visible features of the cards, blurring or obscuring key details. So now we're going with some sort of special inks, right? So we can see that with all these kind of things that they can do, if you do one, you might stop the CT scanning. If you combine, 3 or 4 of these together, you're pretty much making the CT scanning industry dead by next year. You could have decoy cards inside, you could have the metalized kind of cards inside the packs, you could then have this special inks for encryption all inside, and bam, you've got a kind of a product that cannot be CT scanned. And even if they did, you've got the decoy card there where they can't really make 100% accurate kind of prediction. So no one's going to be paying these, small businesses to CT scan packs when they can't really guarantee, is it a real rare? Is it a fossilized? Is it a code card variation of the rare card? We don't know. So there's obviously a lot of ways that they could kind of stop this. Number 9 is RFID/NFC technology. Incorporate RFID or NFC tags within each pack that emit randomized data signals to disrupt scanning efforts. Yes, so this is what wallets have, right? So again, wallets adapted, right? So wallets, what happened was, it used to just be leather, but what happened was there was a new technology that people could come and they could scan your credit card information inside your wallet, right? So what did wallets need to do to adapt? They had to add RFID technology to their wallets. So there you go, the wallet industry adapted. There was a threat that literally was about to cannibalize the wallet industry, and then they had to now, all wallets, if you're gonna buy one, the first thing that people ask, especially older generations who prefer wallets, they say, hey, does it have RFID technology? Because people know the threat, especially when they travel and they go overseas, scamming is prevalent. So there you go, there's an example of, an industry that had to adapt because a new technology came in, right? Then number 10 is regular audits and adjustments. So regularly audit and adjust packaging materials to stay ahead of new scanning techniques. Definitely. So, the kind of consensus which ChatGPT gave was implementing a combination of these strategies could significantly reduce the effectiveness of CT scanning and help protect the integrity and excitement of opening Pokemon booster packs. Correct. And just from seeing this, I think that the threat, just while I read that, is becoming less and less of a problem. This whole kind of thing, oh, the hobby's dying, oh, the hobby's gonna go, everything's gone. Yeah. Maybe some of the sealed products from today, but also guys, your sealed product that you bought today, even with this technology, if you scan it, it's not like all your booster boxes have, nothing inside. There's gonna be some of your booster boxes that have rare cards. So even if that, you might have packs that have, the chase card inside the booster box. Will there be a market for, booster boxes with the chase cards inside? I don't know. But this thing is that the new and the adaptability that's gonna happen now is gonna be really interesting for the hobby. I could totally see that by 2025, this is the kind of advancements that not just Pokemon would do, but Bandai with One Piece, all sports cards collectors. If I were in one of these industries and I was like leading the innovation to how to stop this threat, just from this little list here, which isn't obviously strong enough, they would have to, do more research, but I'm just looking at this. Number 1, I think is a good one, right? So which was multi-layered foil and materials, which essentially puts a reflective surface which distorts the CT scan. So that's one check off the list. Now, the next one, which was metalized inks and holographic elements, I do find that one interesting because I don't think you could probably use the metalized inks on the cards, but maybe you could have a code card or some sort of element inside the pack which just is placed there, which causes a massive disruption to the CT scanning. So there you go, that's something that they could do as well. Then you could have decoy cards, which I think is fantastic, right? With the multi-layered foil pattern, the metalized inks, and the decoy card, you've just added 3 barriers to the CT scan. The decoy card I really like. I actually love that idea because just imagine that. You got a code card, it has a randomized of the chase cards inside the set. You can flip it around, it's a code card, and it's just like nothing. It's just not a hollow pattern. It's just the code card of the chase card. It would cause real problems where they couldn't get 100% guarantee of what's inside the pack, because then it would be like, is it the code card or is it the chase card? We don't know. So that is a really, really cool idea. I think I really like the decoy code cards. Then you have the special inks for encryption, which is use special inks that react differently under scanning to encrypt visible features of the cards, blurring or obscuring details. Definitely. Or NFC tags inside packs could also be a thing, right? So you also have that metallic plate that I talked about, which I heard about before, that they could insert this plate which completely distorts it. When you have all these barriers inside, you probably don't have to go that overarching as I've just mentioned here, but you could add, 2 or 3 of these barriers that just cause confidence to completely die. So no one's gonna pay these kind of CT scanning companies money to scan the packs, because you're going to stop them with technology of you adapting. And this is the key for adapting. This is where all these companies need to adapt, and they need to do it probably as early as 2025, which I think they will. I think they know the kind of magnitude of problems this can cause. Maybe your older products will be of a threat, but in terms of the future, and this is where we really need to think, because we can't look at the past, we've got to look at what's ahead, right? That in life, we have to think forward. This is where the kind of technological advancements are going to be very interesting, and I think it's a great time to be within the hobby, and I cannot wait to see the answer. And I have a feeling that sports cards are going to be the first kind of companies to answer to this, and I think they're going to answer very, very quickly. And I think then, of course, Pokemon and Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh and One Piece and Dragon Ball Fusion World are all going to have the answers as well, because they just need to. It's kind of funny because you could argue that they have been kind of had it very easy. They literally have, once they've done all the work, they just press the printing machine, they get the products out, they ship them out, and they've kind of make money. I think this is where it's going to have a more interesting thing for the hobby, and this is great because it has to keep these companies on their toes. It's not that you can just print free money. You need to adapt. We may see the cost come up to us, right? Is that a problem? Of course, but if that has to preserve the hobby, then that's a collective thing we all need to kind of, agree upon, which is kind of the cost will most likely be passed on to the consumer. But hopefully they can find a way to work this out on scale to not cause this to be such a problem. I do think that, in terms of this is where adaptability is key. This is, we're going to see this. We're seeing this in real time. We're literally seeing the adaptability in real time. Though one thing that this does kind of bring upon is the trends of 2024. Now, I did make a video talking about the trends to look out for in 2024, and I didn't mention CT scanning, though I did talk a lot about the digital aspect of collecting and how that needs to transfer to a digital aspect. I do think a digital world of Pokemon collecting will become a thing. Feel free to click this video to see the 6 trends of Pokemon collecting and what to expect in the next few years. In this video, I look over what we will expect within Pokemon and TCG collecting in the near future. Click that video that's appearing on screen and I'll see you there.